Okay, and we're good to go. Go, G.
Okay, welcome to Land Down Under Hangout. Yay. This week we're doing... this week we're doing my pick, Binti by Nnedi and... Oh, I'm so sorry. Okorafor.
Oh my God, now you're making me do it.
Okorafor.
Elizabeth has a real book
for me. And
library
it
copy,
actually...
but
yeah, audiobooks.
Oh, look at the difference in covers between the digital and...
No, it was first and second edition.
First and the second.
Yeah, yours is the new release
Yeah.
one.
Right.
I like that cover actually, Matt, that you've got.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Looking off into the...
I'll find the colour version.
I like the one that Elizabeth's got. Sorry, go back, G.
I
haven't even gotten there.
The audiobook, and they actually told me how to pronounce her name, and I thought, remember how to say that, and then completely forgot how to say that. I apologize. But so I did the audiobook, which the narrator, I'm not sure who the narrator was, but I thought the narrator was awesome. It was a nice short little sci-fi with a main character who is I knew I should have written some notes, of African origin, who gets a scholarship to the best university for maths. And I thought that was really kind of a great cross of diversity and our interest in sci-fi, and it was a nice short read, and I've been wanting to read it for a while. It won Hugo and Nebula Awards, and I'd heard lots about it when it came out, so I thought it'd be a great pick for us. So if we would like to have a quick chat about that, I'll go around the circle. Elizabeth, I've got you first.
Sure, I am. This will be my third time for reading it through. So I've read this one and the two others that come after it. On the whole, I really enjoyed it a lot. It does some it goes in some extremely interesting directions, things that you might not have expected at the beginning. But I think it digs into some interesting things. What home is and what it is to live there, what it's like to be an outsider, and also bring together dissenting sides, I think. Different aspects of it. On the whole, I really enjoyed it. It's an excellent read.
Awesome. Cool. Sarah, you're actually next.
Skip. No, she's okay.
No. I was using it to unmute myself. Yeah, look, I just finished this tonight. I was being very aware that I didn't want to get too far ahead of myself like I've done before, and I'm going, I'm a week ahead and everybody else is catching up, and what did we read? I enjoyed this. It wasn't as hands down amazing as I thought it would be. I found some of the structure a little bit weird, and I found like bits that we kind of spent a long time in versus bits that we didn't. But on the whole, I think there's just so much promise here that's why I was so hooked. It was just promise, and it was very tantalizing. And I'm glad to know that there is more of this universe, because that's, I think, part of what makes it quite compelling. And possibly if it had been in a book or in a longer series, then it might have been part of my issues might have been rectified with a copy editor. I'm not sure, around sort of pacing, I guess. But it's so nice to have a young adult book that addresses some of the things that we as first world people, and a lot of us, sorry Matt, females, address each day and think we're still battling for, but there's still so much battle out there, and it's set in the future, and there's still so many more battles for females to be won. And it was just, I think it was a refreshing point of view, and that's what really hooked me in and enjoyed reading it. And I did like that it was a nice short, sharp read. And I am kind of wanting to know where she goes with this. So yeah, I think Binti could be an inspirational hero to a lot of young women coming up through the reading ranks. So I look to see where it goes.
Cool, thanks, Sarah. Kim, you're listed as landowner. Go.
I think it passed it, yeah, when Mel dropped out. I think it
Oh,
handed
yeah.
it.
Oh, sorry. I wonder what it's saying for me then.
Oh,
Both
mine
the
is
same.
Excellent Down Under. Yeah, there you go. I
Kim,
quite enjoyed it. I thought it was very well written. I did have some problems with it, with the story near the end. Some of the points I just kind of niggled at me. I didn't quite think if it gelled well near the end in some parts, in some little respects. But otherwise, I think it was great story, very well written. I really enjoyed it, other than a few things, but we can get into that later.
Cool. Kirsten?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. I would say I was pleasantly surprised because I didn't enjoy Who Fears Death all that much. Did we all read that? Who read Who Fears Death?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because it was really, really dark, and I suppose because this was a YA audience, it wasn't as dark, and I quite liked that. The only real problem that I had with it, well, there was no, I don't want to say stuff that's going to spoil the other book in case people want to read it, but like it was like there were things that happened in that other book that traumatized me, and I didn't feel like I was not going to be able to sleep in and feel traumatized by this book. So even though there was themes and stuff that were dark, it wasn't like, I think there was some triggering things for me in the other book, I suppose is another way to put it. So the only real issue I had with this is my own issue with, I like long things and not short books, because I go, wow, everything happened too quickly and the thing was solved so fast, and it's like, that's because it's a short novella and they have to do that, otherwise it's not short anymore. But I kept expecting there to be more complications, and then it was like, oh no, it's just ended.
Don't worry, there's two more
That's not a
books.
problem with the book. That's a problem with me not being much of a novella fan. I like longer things. But I enjoyed it, and obviously I must have enjoyed it if I'm like, it wasn't long enough. Because if I didn't like it, I wouldn't have been thinking it needed to be longer. So yeah.
Not only are there two more after this, but they're also longer novellas.
Oh, good. I am intending to read the others actually.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Matt, you're up next.
Hey, cool. So I'm going to stand on the shoulders of giants and say I felt like pretty much a combination of what Sarah said and what Kirsten said, and for most of the same reasons. I did quite enjoy reading this book, or novella, I guess. I had read Who Fears Death and really enjoyed that, which sounds weird given the subject matter, but I still thought it was a great book. But yeah, I had the same thing as Kirsten. I got a little bit of frustration because it was a novella and just it didn't have as much, by nature of the medium, it didn't have as much room to expand on things and explore some of the things that I wanted to know more about in the world. So I had a little bit of like, oh, I want to know more. But otherwise, yeah, I had a couple of things like Sarah with some pacing at a couple of times. I thought it was a bit weird, but overall, I really enjoyed it, and I am also going to get the other two in the series, and I'm looking forward to reading those as well.
Oh, yep, cool. Now, you're up next.
Who?
You?
Now,
Oh, I thought it might have been me. That's why I checked.
you.
I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. This was my second time reading it through, and I have finished the series, so I have to be careful. But I did reread it again today, so I'm fairly confident that I'll be all right not to spoil things. I personally will say from experience as advice, if you're planning to read on, don't leave it too long. You're going to want to have this story fairly fresh in your brain when you do it.
Okay.
Especially for the third one in particular. Other than that, yeah, I mean, really, I didn't find any issues with it at all. I thought it was really well written. I think the only reason I didn't give 5 stars was because I didn't go, oh my God, this is my book, which is what I usually want for a 5-star. I gave it 4. I thought it was extremely well written and enjoyable. I liked the premise. I liked all of the different themes that she brought into it, and a lot of them make me think, but I don't necessarily have answers, which is nice. Yeah, I thought she was a great character.
Cool. Yep. And Naomi, you're up last.
So I'm going to be the voice of dissent. I didn't enjoy it as much as everyone else. I mean, I don't know. I found that I wanted more from the story. There was just a lot of. I read sci-fi and fantasy for the sci-fi and fantasy of it, and there was just a lot of stuff about the people, which isn't a bad thing. Like, there was nothing wrong with that. That's just not what I want out of it. Like, if I'm going to read a book that's that sort of book, I want to read a non-fiction book about a real sort of village of people, or, you know, someone's real life story kind of thing. Like, there was just a lot of, like, I don't know. I just didn't enjoy it. It was well written, and I can see why everyone else really enjoyed it. It was just not for me.
Fair enough. Okay, well, I really enjoyed it. I think I said that already. I've had this on my list for quite a while. We all know that I like a bit of diversity in my reading. The first thing, of course, I want to talk about is the fact that the character is not a white female princess, whatever. She's a totally different kind of a character than anything I've read before. And so I just want to see how we all felt relating to that character and some of the things that she ran into being that character as well in the story itself. Leon?
Well, she certainly ran into a lot of racism, didn't she? A lot of people just didn't like her because of who she was, not like nothing based on her personality or their personalities of the people that they'd met. It's just like she was a lower class. That's it. That was the whole problem that everyone had with her, is that she was lower class and they saw her as dirty, which changed once she was in the ship with people who were more like her, were younger, and just wanted to get to know her. Took the time to get to know her, but it just seemed like everybody else, even the people at the university when she got there, just sort of didn't know her and just judged her from afar, no matter what. It seemed like practically no one, except that small group of students in that ship,
who lasted a very long time.
Yeah. Just like most of them didn't seem to want to nobody seemed to want to get to know her, except those very small group of people who were all in the a very similar circumstance to her. Everybody else just sort of looked at her with disgust or just like, maybe not disgust, but just curiosity from a distance, without like thinking that she was weird, not that she was different and interesting, but that she was weird. So there weren't very many people on her side in this book.
And how far removed is that from reality as well?
Probably not too far from reality, I don't think.
And I think the thing is too, with those circumstances, those times she didn't get to spend time with those people, it was all first impression times.
Yes.
She was only there for a short time when she was talking to the people at the university. She was only and we didn't really get the first impressions from the fellow university students on the ship before they became friends. So they might have had exactly the same reaction and gotten over it.
Oh, they definitely, I think the university people on the ship definitely did have their reaction at the beginning, and then they were like, when they got to know her, they changed the way they behaved, but they did I think they made that snap judgment when she first walked in, because she was talking about everyone was staring at her, and
Was the incident with the woman touching her hair on the ship,
that was I think that was in the station when she was waiting,
in the station
when she was going through security.
That was
horrifying.
That was horrifying, and that's also something that I've had friends of colour say to me is that, you know, and actually even a friend who's not of color who doesn't want to be touched if people want touching her, and it's just rude, and just because someone looks exotic and it looks weird doesn't give you permission to touch them. And but I also know that that was written in there to horrify us, right? To see from her point of view is that people think that they have rights to touch you. So I did read that and go, this is a young adult novel. I can see what you're doing here. So I did see that. I did see it as the ploy, but it did get to me. But I also knew it was there. But I also put myself in the point of going, these are people of privilege, young women, probably in the early 20s. She is 16 at the what was she 16? Like what is she going to do? Like they just didn't even see her as a person. They see her as a child, and that they can just like, you know, it was pretty awful.
It wasn't even as a child. It
No,
was the
like,
other. And it was that she was also covered in mud. That comment that she's covered in dirt, she's dirty. Why doesn't she wash? And and I also want to talk a little bit about the reveal of the culture as you go through the story as well. So the idea of it's the first introduction of the woman touching her hair, but then later on of the boy on the ship almost touching, but actually not going for the touch, but saying, I can see something in this, and that being part of the culture.
He did touch, I'm pretty sure.
But he touched not because of the exotic feel of a different hair, but because he saw the mathematical equation.
He was attracted to the mathematics, which means he was attracted to her, which is why,
and
because mathematics isn't her. Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
And there was something else as well. I'll remember it at a later date, I'm sure. There was another thing as well.
The two incidents there kind of mirror nicely. That you've got that first one where it's like an intrusion, like very much an intrusion, and then the second one where it starts out as an intrusion person. So the contrast works really nicely there.
There's a lot of difference in terms of how the two people talk about the situation as well. Like when the First Lady touches her, it's very much like she doesn't even really engage with her, with Binti. She talks to a friend about what's happening. Whereas with him, he talks to her, asks her questions about her culture and why she does this and things on those lines. So it's just a very different interaction in that respect, beyond just even her feel of the person itself.
Yeah.
And even when he touches her and she turns around to look at him, he's apologetic, like he realizes he's just done something that wasn't
whereas the Karush,
appropriate.
Those Karush women were seeing her not even as a human, that is more like an animal, like you know, here is a sow, you know, what is the, you know, let's comment on it as opposed. And I didn't understand. I actually thought that she had an ability to understand languages at that point. It wasn't until I was like, oh no, they're just freaking rude women who just sat there and spoke the same language, knowing that she would understand them and just didn't give a damn, you know, or just didn't even occur to them, you know. And that's a lot of anyway, sorry.
The other thing was the Ujiji.
I was wondering, thank you. I was looking at, I Googled it after I started reading. I was like, I have heard of this, but I didn't know a lot about it. So I Googled it and looked it up. And I was like, I don't know how to pronounce it. So somebody else says it in the
they pronounced it. I think they pronounced it Ujiji in the audiobook. And yeah, so again, go back to that interaction of that woman touching her hair, saying that she's dirty. Why do they cover themselves in dirt like that? And then the contrasting of not only that the Ujiji ends up being a healing element for the aliens, but that scene with her and her cousins where they washed themselves clean and felt naked, and the Ujiji being like her connection back home and her protection as well. Yeah, that was really interesting, I thought.
I thought it was just so sad at the end when she's trying to make the new version of it, and how she's sort of feeling about that circumstance. And it's good in some respects because it's tying her to this new location and to what she's starting as a new part of her life, but it's also bad because she's feeling disconnected from home. And yet she makes contact with home after that, and so that's good.
Yeah, the part where she was describing washing the very last of it away and washing the last connection to her home away. Yeah, that was
powerful.
Sad, wasn't it?
Sad.
Yeah. Powerful, but
bittersweet.
I don't know.
Bittersweet,
Yeah, bittersweet. Who said that? Who was that?
G,
beautifully said, because I think for I'm someone who left home to go to university. I know Matt was as well. Did anyone else leave their home city to go somewhere else to become?
No, but Bobby did. She's just not here.
Okay. Hands out to Bobby. I know exactly what they mean. Like, I set up everything to try and remind myself of home, and trying to set up things that made me feel like I was in my room back in Wellington, when I was in a room that was, I don't know how far away, because it wasn't really that far. It was 6 hours drive, you know what I mean?
Enough.
I lived in New Zealand. It wasn't that far. But, I think there was that moment. There was that moment of moving on. It wasn't as meaningful as what Binti goes through, but there is that point of going, and it was actually something we had in our wedding, because we took a lot from the Judaism and the wedding ceremonies that we from that culture, because we loved it. And there was a bit where you break the glass in a Jewish wedding ceremony, and we did that. And I broke the glass, because always it's the man who breaks the glass, and I'm not about that. But it was also because, but I did love what it represented, which means that you do not belong to your father's house or your parents' house or your family's house. You belong to each other. It is breaking with the past and it's moving to something new. And there was something about that washing away. It's bittersweet. Thank you, G. And I kind of feel like I've had many moments of that in my time. And so I totally understood that moment of Binti going, I need to do this to move on with my future. I'm not going to forget, but it does, feel like this is something I need to hold it here, not on me. I don't know.
It's also not just about leaving home. It's also about that growing up. That. Yeah. I think even though even if we can't all relate to the leaving the home, it's that leaving that family unit and going out on your own and feeling like you're an adult for the first time, but also feeling like, well, you're not really an adult, and and
that's university, is it not?
Yeah.
That's just totally tertiary education.
Yeah.
Don't you know? Gee, totally right. You've been in tertiary education for how long?
Never leaving.
I think it's also it's made more poignant by the fact that nobody leaves her home, which I find vaguely disturbing personally. I understand that it's part of their culture and all of that sort of stuff, but unlike with the some of the other aspects of the culture which are not familiar to me and things on those lines, I'm good with that. But the idea of this feeling of this pressure that's put on them that you don't leave home, I find that disturbing, unfortunately.
There was many things I found disturbing, and I also knew it was my whiteness and it was my privilege, but I also know which stems from the fact that I am a woman who is white, who is enabled by women who have come before me, and I can see Binti being one of those for her culture, because she spoke so often about saying women don't really get to determine their own destinies in her culture. Like, she was expected to take over her father's shop. It didn't matter what she wanted. It was what she was expected to do. And it was also expected, that bit you just talked about where she was washing herself. All the girls went down, had a wash in the lake, and they were, and they felt, and they're like, oh, that actually got very much tainted by me from experience, by the point where she said, where it was written, where they wouldn't be wanted by their families, they would have been beaten, that they would not be able to be wives, they were, it all got tainted by the fact that they were women. And I know that that's me, and I'm reflecting on that for me, but I also know that we need women like Binti, just be trailblazers to kind of grow and evolve cultures. And and I also, to be fair, I was also colored by some stuff I was hearing about some Hasidic Jew communities in Brooklyn who are saying, like, having up their own signs on the street to say, so I was just listening to 99% Invisible, where it's like women should walk on one side, not the other. And, you know, it's like, okay, yeah, the patriarchy is still alive and happening. And, you know, where do we say it's culturally acceptable? And where do we say it's like, oh, this is what I find it hard to kind of grapple with sometimes. And I enjoyed this book because it was making me think really hard about some of those things, about my uncomfortability from my privilege of the people who have gone before me versus where it's in other cultures. Does this make sense?
I agree that Binti's a trailblazer. I'm not so sure that her taking over the shop part was really patriarchy related or more cultural related, because I don't think it was about her being a female. It was about her being the person who had the skill set to do the job, and therefore family responsibility and things on those lines. I
was confusing things there. Apologies. I was just, I've had some drinks, people. You might have been able to tell.
The problem with starting at 9, Sarah, we have a few drinks beforehand, right?
I know, right? And apologies, especially, thank you, Perth person, who is holding it up.
Only a couple. It's all right. Okay. Yeah. So one of the things, I'm going to skip right to the thing that I had the biggest issue with, and that was the sting of the aliens and the changing of her physically without telling her what or asking or any of that, and her kind of sliding over it as well.
I think that and the issues that I had with that one, and the fact that her and Oku became friends very fast,
very quickly,
after it had killed all her friends, all passengers on the ship, and threatened her life several times, and all of a sudden, like 2 weeks later, they're in university and they're best friends. That bit really annoyed me. I think that bit's the part in the story that it doesn't make sense to me. The bit where they changed her just annoys me. So the bit where they're friends just doesn't make sense to me in this story.
I think I kind of get that a bit more, because
it seems a little Stockholm syndrome, though.
They're both othering each other the whole way through it. So they've both got misinterpretations of each other's culture and misinformation, and mistakes were made on both sides, and over a period of time from not knowing each other culture or who they were or what they were.
Yeah,
so,
I think so much that they became friends. I think it's just the short story format where it seemed way too fast.
Yeah,
just way too fast for them to become friends.
Was.
I could see it. I could see it over a period of time, but straight away it was way too fast. Too much had happened.
It would have made a really nice novel.
Yes.
and that was the problem I had too. Was I was like, and not just with that part, but also with the whole. The aliens were like, oh, okay, yeah, you can be our ambassador and we'll just go and talk. And now we're going to just stop fighting and it's all good now. And I was like, well, that was easy.
I think,
I couldn't
from
work
that
out.
point, things just happened way too fast to fit well into the story. It really needed to be longer to fit all those things in and have them make sense in my head. It just happened way too fast, and I don't think people get over things that fast. Even aliens the aliens get over things that fast, but I don't think humans do.
And we've spoken about this many times in this hangout about how we go, people do not get over shit this quickly, e.g. Artemis. Is it Artemis? Like, no woman would ever forgive their friend for sleeping. Absolutely not. You misunderstand everything. Anyway, back to the story.
I agree. And this even like the university, and they were like, oh, sorry, here's your stinger back. We'll forgive all the humans you've killed. It's not.
See, I can see it a bit from their point of view that most of them aren't human. So most of them
that's a good point.
aren't at war with these creatures. It's humans and the Medusa are at war with them. I think it's only 5% that are human in this university. So most of them. Was that
what it was?
It's not their. It's not their war. It's not something that has them very much at all.
And
that was a bit of word building that was missing a little bit for me. That's and actually maybe that's Matt how you felt. I felt there was little bits of world building that could have happened a little bit more, because I kind of like, I was like, oh, I don't know. It just felt a little bit like, I'm
much left out.
I wanted to know more about the science of this future world and the harmonizing and how maths works into the way you do, obviously, physics things and all that kind of stuff. But
which was awesome.
Again, you only have this many pages to play with, so
yeah. And what is the story you're telling? And the author had a story she was telling, and it wasn't the story harmonizing, which but I was the same as you.
True.
I didn't hear a word of who was that. Was that Elizabeth?
In fact, I think that actually plays into, that's me. I was saying that it's not true that it wasn't about harmonizing. It was totally about harmonizing.
I agree, Elizabeth.
That's one of the reasons why when I read it the first time, I definitely felt the same way as Kim, that it just happened way too fast, and I was just full.
Well, this is my second read, so I definitely wasn't as annoyed by it the second time as I was the first time. I sort of picked up more context and wasn't as annoyed by the pace, but I was still annoyed by the pace, just not as much.
I agree though, because I feel like not only in this one, but the entire trilogy, the whole point of the story, and I know it's not really a spoiler, it's just to say in general what the whole point of the story is the harmonizer aspect. Like, that's really the whole thing. So this is really just sort of introducing that skill set that she's got, and how she actually uses that. So I think that as much as it's annoying to do it this way, I think you've got to think of this as almost as the first third of a novel, rather than, and it does tell its own complete story, but also there's so much more to come. So
yeah.
But even given and the way that Matt's looking for,
I didn't get that, Elizabeth.
I think that
Elizabeth, do you want to try turning off your video, because you're frozen for me, and maybe your audio will work a little bit better without your video on, and we'll be able to hear you a little bit better.
I was just saying that I think that
I'm sorry, Elizabeth, you're still not legible. Can't understand what you're saying.
My brain is trying so hard.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to
We're all
take this
sitting here
long.
just staring at the screen, trying to think.
I don't know.
I think she said go out and come back. I think that's what she said.
Yeah,
I think that's what she said.
Okay, good. Yeah, it was just sort of stretching it, and I'm like,
but it was also like it was every second word.
Yeah, I was getting enough that I was like, I could just concentrate
together.
Was it every now and then it freezes on someone else's face when she talks, and I saw Sarah going.
I thought poor Elizabeth had bitching wrist face. She looked so annoyed with something I said. I'm like,
Fisting wretch face?
Did I really say that? I'm sorry.
Yep. But I like it.
Okay, guys, good news. The heater is now off. I've had enough vodka. I'm hot.
I can see. You've even taken off the cardigan. Things are happening.
And the sleeves are up as well.
I know.
I think I have to go let the dog out. I think he's
I can really. What gave it away?
Now's a good time for me to get a top up of
Hi, Bobby.
Oh, it's Bobby.
Sarah's had a few drinks.
Very happy. Sorry.
You made it in time for discussion. We're still on Binti.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're just having a semi break while we're hoping Elizabeth makes it back in, because she was having some technical problems.
Her bandwidth is terrible.
But in the good news, Naomi has fabulous hair.
Yes.
Yes.
Luke was like in the room right next to where the dog was barking. Seriously. I had to walk to the other end of the
He's
house.
just
to let
tuned
the
it
dog
out. He's
She's like,
tuned
I'm
it
on
out.
the phone. I'm like, oh, really? What am I
On
doing?
the mobile phone.
Yeah. What do you think I'm doing? This
Yes.
video of me.
Probably working on his day off after hours. Thanks, Luke. Sorry, guys. Hi, Bobby.
Hey, how you going?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm a bit tired. I didn't get a nap this afternoon, so I've been losing steam at about 2 o'clock. But I had a video that really needed editing. So
I was going to say, what were you editing?
okay, so I can't say what it is because I've been doing a lot of video transcribing and transcriptioning
Cool.
lately. Yeah,
Cool.
so I can't
Gotcha.
say what it was, but in this case, sometimes they're lectures and it doesn't matter. But this one was an actual movie, so I can't say anything.
No, it's cool.
Ooh.
I thought it was
Cool.
I thought it was something like, like you had like a vlog coming out of your trip, or I was getting
No.
excited that it was something like personal. It's all good.
I didn't get anything of my trip because I was jet lagged the whole time. I didn't stay long enough to get acclimated. So there's
You're
no
like,
video.
is this worth filming? No, it's worth
No.
sleeping. It's worth sleeping through. This is totally worth sleeping through.
All right.
Elizabeth, how are you going? Can we hear from you now? We haven't talked about anything else.
What? Are you talking to me?
No, Elizabeth.
Oh, Elizabeth.
Okay, good. I'm like, what's going on? Hi, Elizabeth. Here you are.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
we're frozen.
Frozen.
So annoying.
Rude.
All right, guys. I'm going to say we'll probably need to move on. Oh no. Is everyone still having the same problem?
Yes.
Yeah.
Frozen.
Oh dear.
So
Elizabeth,
is
I
there
need a modem
anything
restart.
else that anyone was really wanting to discuss about that before we have a quick discussion about the ever so filthy and free alt that I provided?
God, filthy is an understatement, but anyway.
I didn't get to read your alt. I'm so sorry, but I wanted to.
Yeah, I didn't get to it either.
It's
I
still there.
wanted to read it. I probably will. I'll probably
there.
I'm
go.
like
I
5 pages
probably
from the end,
will.
but I think I've got the
You'll
gist of it.
probably you'll get me excited after this.
You only need to read probably
Yeah.
chapters and you've read the whole thing.
Yeah.
Right.
It took me literally half an hour to work out how to get it sent, because Mel was like, I got it sent to my Kindle. I'm like, how did she do that? And then I freaking took me half an hour to work out what this Kindle was called versus another Kindle. And
Before we do that, is there any more Binti things? The other thing I want to say is it's really encouraging to hear that those who have read it before have reread it 2 times.
I
helps when
reread
it's
it
short.
today. I started at lunch. I read a third at lunch. I read a half at the end of my work day because there was absolutely nothing to do. My prac manager went home early. So I had it on Google Books. I bought it with Google credit. So I logged on to my Google account.
so I wanted to talk about, can someone remind me of the name of oh God, I can't remember anybody's name now. Is it Okwu?
Okwu, yep.
Okwu. The gender changes. Did anyone else notice those?
Oh, I did not.
Went from she to it to he. Anyone else notice that?
I must admit I didn't, but I did
think
see
I noticed the first time, but not this time.
I noticed the they. I
Yeah.
noticed the they at that time and was sort of like, because I knew it as he from the other books because I've read them much more recently. I was sort of like, oh, that's interesting. But no, I didn't notice the she at all.
Because
I think it was she. Was it she early on?
She was
The
she
very
early on
first.
because her totem, which I can't think of the name, the Nigerian name she gave the totem, Elan.
Yeah.
Elan translated and gave a female voice to Okwu. And then when that turned off and she could just, Binti could just hear Okwu, it became it. And then literally at the end, Binti started referring to, he said, like when she went to go and meet Okwu in Okwu's hall of residence, for lack of a better word.
Like
I was like,
he,
it said he. So
Interesting.
I was very interested in that, and actually wondered if those who had read forward can see whether there's whether it's just a thing. I suppose I don't know if it's a case of
So is the gender actually changing throughout the book,
exactly,
or is she misgendering the character because she doesn't know
or
what gender?
was it bad
Or is
copy
there a
editing?
gender
I couldn't
at
work
all?
it out. I actually couldn't work it out. I couldn't work
Yeah.
with this bad copy editing, and actually before I got to the end and read how well, like, because this sounds terrible, guys, but I did think this seems like an author who's got a lot of great stuff there. There's a lot of promise for this book. Maybe they've got some stuff under their belt, but there seems promise here. And I actually thought this seemed a little bit maybe like someone who hasn't quite worked out whether they want their character gendered or not, and forgot to take it out, as it were.
No, Nnedi Okorafor would not
transcript.
have that problem.
No.
Nnedi Okorafor is
Right.
no.
Okay. So now I know that, but then I'm like, I'm in a YH novel. So is this a deliberate thing? I'm like, I'm in a young adult. Sorry, not YH. I'm in a YA novel. Is this a deliberate thing to try and work that through? Because I'm an adult in my 40s, and usually in adult novels they address gender stuff and they talk deliberately to it, which is cool. And I don't mind either way. I just thought it was an interesting thing. I'm like, ooh, okay, I see it move. I see you. I see what you're doing there, author. I don't know what you're putting down, but I'm up for it if you're, but I'm interested. And for those of you who read ahead, do you see anything come of this? And if Binti genders Okwu as male, is there anything given specific to why?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because it's a thing that it makes total sense that a human would not know what gender pronouns to use for an alien that may not even.
Absolutely.
Like, maybe the alien culture doesn't have two genders. Maybe they have more than two. Maybe they don't have genders at all. And if you don't know anything about that alien culture, you might kind of go on what impression you like we were talking about with Murderbot, where we're like, a lot of us were using she even though we knew that the character was gender neutral, because it was this bias that we had of how we were seeing the character. And it could be a thing like that with Binti, that the way she's interpreting it is the way the pronouns that she's using are based on how she's interpreting it.
I would say that
maybe from reading on you would know more. I don't know.
Based on what I recall, and to be fair, it was a little while since I finished the series. Based on what I recall, I don't remember it actually coming up again, and I would imagine that her purpose behind doing it here is exactly what you're saying. Looking at a foreign alien that she's had no contact with before and not knowing how to gender under those circumstances. So I would say that's all she was doing. I'm not sure I would call this YA, though.
There's always a blurry line with all YA, and it seems to be if you make a character who is under 18, the book is suddenly straight away it's YA, even if the content is not necessarily YA.
The reason I query it is because she's written stuff that is deliberately labelled as YA. She spends a lot of time on Twitter going, "This book is not YA," but we're pointing to what she has written that is YA, which is a Carter Witch.
Look, this is just my impression, but my impression was even without the character, this read YA as a YA novel. But that's just my takeaway from.
I read it as sci-fi. This is a sci-fi novel, I would have said. But
anyway, that's YA. Yeah, but
I think it's definitely a publisher choice about how they market things. And it doesn't always make sense with the book.
Well, this was published by Tor.com. They don't really do YA at all.
Yeah.
But it is.
But I could see this being
about coming of age.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it depends on what makes YA for you. So
does the theme make it YA or not? Like what's the definition? Is there a definition?
to me, the theme is around communication, reconciliation, and things along those lines. Those to me aren't
what
YA
makes
themes.
you who you are, what makes you where you come from. And there's like, don't get me wrong, these are all universal themes, but put it this way, I think this would be, and this is a huge compliment, I think this should be taught in schools. I think it's a great book.
I don't disagree with that.
You know, there's so many good things for 16-year-olds to dive into, or even 13-year-olds. It could be taught earlier than the character's age. And there's nothing that's, there's some violence in it, but nothing gratuitously. Yeah, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think it had violence, but it wasn't. Yeah, like you said, it wasn't really.
But it was well placed. It was well placed, and I actually got your attention, and it drew you up to what she was going through. It was, but it was good though. I
was like, they're gone, and like
I was like, whoa! I was totally
Yep. That was like where you go, oh, this is a different story than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, this is not like the go off to Hogwarts and
learn
stuff. Like,
I am totally up for the let's go to the university story on a different planet.
Yeah, Hogwarts School of Harmonizing and Intergalactic Relations.
I am there.
And weapon making, apparently.
Yes, also that.
Yeah.
I felt like there was an unfinished discussion about the stinger before.
Yes. Elizabeth, she's now got good internet.
Yes, everything's good now.
Oh yeah. I was going to say earlier that I don't think that the harmonizing will play out in the way that will satisfy Matt, because I don't feel like they really delve into it's like it's not really, it's more of a magic concept.
Not explained.
Yeah. Not important for the story, really.
Yeah.
Did they get her into
treeing? They don't explain it, that's all. They don't treat it as science.
Sorry, the explanation is not important.
Yeah,
just that it is a thing.
Yeah. Do they go into treeing more? Because I actually wanted to get more in-depth explanation of how she feels and how she goes into it. And again, because I understood she was 16, she hadn't quite worked out how to, I guess, verbalize or put into words that feeling. But did others have something they took away from treeing?
Not really.
I thought it was like a state of mind that I've had on occasion doing like really intense programming type things, and I kind of got the same feeling.
Flow? Is it flow?
It is flow. That's what I kind of.
Yeah, I wondered if it was flow or is it trance. Like I was trying to understand. And again, like I think this is the curse of a novella, is that I would have loved her to spend more time describing her treeing, because I was fascinated by it, and how it helped her. So I just wondered if others had been quite interested in her descriptions of that and how she fell into that and then saw the Elan come to life in front of her.
I feel like treeing is a little like Sherlock's Mind Palace, where it's her sort of mind space where she thinks out how everything goes together and how all the math works. And it's not exactly the same, but it's sort of a good format to like think of how it's working without having more framework. Like it's her sort of mind space that she uses to do the math and sort of work through everything in like sort of without being in the external world, as it were.
Yeah. It reminded me a little bit of in the Lady Astronaut books when Alma was getting stressed out, she would start reciting like prime numbers and it kind of reminded me of the similar thing, like I'm going to focus in on this thing that's going to help me to deal with all the other shit that's going on around me, basically. Almost like meditating.
I think it is that for her under these circumstances, because she's dealing with stressful circumstances, but she does do it elsewhere, so it's not just
she's not
for
the
that
only
purpose.
one either.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's a technique that's being taught. Because they talk to the other students about doing it and everything as well. So
it kind of made me think like meditating with maths.
Yeah, pretty much in some respects. But I think
which I loved. I was like, that is so cool, because if someone could teach me both of those things, I'd be golden.
I love, but I think that Matt's description of it being like a flow thing is really sort of its purpose and its reason. So I was going to say, sorry to move on. I highlighted the scene where after the attack, and she's got them all scared, and she's about to go and hide in the room, and she grabs all of the food and the water. So very sensibly, I was like, oh my God, that's me. I wouldn't be able to fight out of it, but if I managed to survive and be able to go and hide, I'd be very sensible and thinking about what I needed to do, even in a panic situation. I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna need food and water. I don't know if I've got enough, but I'll get some to try and get by. I was just like, oh, for once in a crisis situation, it's what I would do.
Run away with the food and hide somewhere.
Exactly that.
Sensible.
Very sensible.
More characters should do that.
Agreed with that.
Solve a lot of problems.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of? What did you guys think of the fish transportation and how they use biological?
Yeah, that was fascinating.
I thought it was super cool, and that I was so
good.
excited when I read that, and then it all went haywire, and then turned out we were in a hostage type situation.
The whole time I was just thinking of Moira.
Yeah.
Moira, which was
Moya.
Moya, sorry, Moya.
Farscape?
From Farscape.
Yeah.
Been
I
watching
didn't
Farscape.
think of that. That makes total sense. Yeah. I didn't even think of that, but yeah, now you say that.
And I did laugh. I love those. That was kind of fun. I thought biological technology, and there was a bit where I actually highlighted it because it made me laugh. Where Okwu said, "I wish I just could just kill you." I paused, and then she says, "Like my mother always says, we all wish for many things." I was like, yeah, because you just want to get really sarcastic with these creatures after a while. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, I mean, she explicitly links Okwu to like her brother, and I feel like they do kind of have a bit of a dynamic like that.
Yeah. No, I think that's actually a good point. Maybe Elizabeth is that maybe why she starts gendering Okwu towards male. Good point. Because I actually weirdly felt more comfortable when she started referring to Okwu as it, and then she suddenly went down the he route, and I went, what? Where did this come from? So
I was actually wondering when you guys were saying that, with whether it maybe had something to do with Okwu's status within his society had changed now that he was attending university and had helped gain the what was it called again? The leaders,
the chiefs, Stinger.
Yeah, Stinger. That's it. He found a way to manage to do that without them having to fight, and so perhaps that had elevated his status, and maybe the gender change had something to do with that.
But that seems to be all, which is the interesting part, seems to be within Binti's decisioning, if it makes sense, because she gendered the chief as male right from the beginning, and started with Okwu as female, then Okwu went to it, and then as the things changed, made the decision to go to he. I don't see anything, and that's what's always interesting, is like even within your own unconscious bias, where you give status according to gender. And I think that could be an interesting thing. But again, I don't know if it plays out further on in the novels or not. I'll have to find out.
Notes. I did some highlighting.
I know, that's why I was just checking my notes. And is there anything I highlighted?
Was there stuff that you wanted to touch on further?
No, I think the hair still. The change of the hair.
Not the fact that it was consensual, but something else about it, or something.
Just all over. She didn't seem really too phased about it happening. I think I'd be freaking out if something suddenly changed alien, and then I'd want to know what the hell had happened. She only asked one question and seemed okay with his response, and I'd be like, no. what does this mean? What's it going to do to me? Am I
what
you?
else have you
Am I
changed?
me?
Yeah.
Am I them? Who am I now? Am I a species of my own? The change of DNA. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just really glossed over. I hope there's more of that later on. I'm assuming
There definitely is.
Definitely is, but I can't say anything because it was spoilery.
I was a little bit spoiled for that too, because I'd seen some other covers of, it must have been the sequels, where she had the blue ends on her hair and stuff, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
kind of like Thulu.
Yeah. But because I'd seen these other covers, I was like, I kind of thought that was
Are
coming.
you saying Binti
was
becomes
partly,
the ancient evil or something? That doesn't sound very good. I don't want to read that.
Not saying anything. Spoilers, Matt.
I was wondering
Matt,
whether
you just spoil it for all of us.
Sorry. Go, Kirsten.
I was just going to say, I wasn't sure when I'd seen those covers whether it was going to be metaphorical about her role as like the intermediary, or whether, but then it was like, oh no, it's actually her. It's like, this is an actual physical change, not just a concept thing that the artist on the cover has decided to do.
Yeah.
I was like,
I thought it was a stylistic choice.
It's
I
happening.
thought it was a stylistic choice, and then when I read it, I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
It was me. I was like, I didn't think of anything of it until I read that. I'm like, oh, actually, not a stylistic choice.
That's
good thing
often
that
the way with covers.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. I'm like, if everybody in the covers, nobody would have any heads. So I just kind of don't worry about it. I'm like, nobody has heads in romance covers, so there's no kissing. You know, all that kissing is metaphorical. Sorry.
That other stuff can happen, you know, it's fine.
But no heads. No heads. Heads are bad.
No, that is all fine to happen. You just, well, we all know why, but you can sub yourself in.
I'm not sure where we're going with this conversation. We haven't started the next book yet.
Anyway.
We've covered everything from my highlights, so I've got nothing else.
I think it is a good point about the how cool she was with it. Again, I don't know if it's an age thing. I'm trying to think back to when I was 16, but I can tell you, and this is just my own experience. I'd have to, refer to the others in the group who've also had major physical changes that upon them. But for me, I grew a child inside me, and I was okay with that. But having had the child and having my body completely having had it change, and even though I'm trying to be okay with it, I'm not. And I'm kind of like, and that's something I inflicted on myself, knowing that my body would change, but I'm still not okay with everything that's changed about it. I'm still not cool about things. I consider surgery all the time because I'm like, this is not what I signed up for, and this is this is really actually annoying because I can't do all the things I used to do. This is frustrating. And that's me with human aliens inside me, right? So let alone someone who's been touched by alien technology and changed in those ways. So yeah, I'm kind of like, I'm with you, Chris. It didn't occur to me until just when you said it. I'm like, or whoever else said that, someone else said it in the group. I'm like, yeah, Binti was kind of G, you said it, didn't you? Where's G? She's not even here.
She's down in the corner.
She's eating silently.
I don't think everyone's got the Brady Bunch thing going on.
She's down the bottom. She dropped off. I don't know where somebody else went. Sorry, you moved. You were up here and now you're down there. But you said it, didn't you? Was that you, G, who said, somehow Binti's cool with it? I don't know. But I'm like, I'm not cool with it. And these are just typical human things.
Yeah.
So I don't know what others think, but I think it's a really good point. So thank you to whoever raised it.
And it's also, she's at a time in her life where she would be, dealing with a lot of change, and it's just one more change. So
maybe it's okay, or not okay, but it's just one of those things. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe after you see all your friends get murdered, having something like that, it's like, it's just,
True.
Maybe
You put
she's
things
still
in
in a bit of
perspective,
shock
right?
from all the other shit that went on, that like it's just like, yep, of course this is happening too, because look at all the other shit that just happened to me.
That's a good point. I mean, one of the things is you could have, like maybe it's a case of, this isn't the perfect case, but think about Holocaust survivors who watched so much death and destruction, and their bodies actually change from malnutrition. But maybe at the end of the day, they go, that's nothing. I'm here. This doesn't matter. I've watched friends suffer.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
There's also sort of the trade-off where she's very deliberately made a choice to act as an intermediary, and so she might be just grateful that she was able to do that. Even though it was done against her will, it gave her the ability to do that thing that she wanted to do, so which in the end probably saved her life as well.
Yeah. But it could just be, again, an issue with time. Like, it's a short novel, so there's not time to explore all the. You can't spend chapters talking about how she's coping with this change, because we don't have the space in this medium to do that. So that could be part of it too,
Yep.
That said, it's on the short side even for a novella.
It is, yeah. Like I was like, wow, I'm done already. Wow.
Yeah,
I know.
It leaves me wondering, what is the shortest length for a novella?
Hang on, I can tell you. Just give me a tick while I look for it.
Yeah. Because to be honest, I was the same. I was like, what, 2 hours, 10 minutes? What, 2 hours, 10 minutes?
That's why I didn't get the
I'm gonna
audio
be,
book.
and that was why I was thinking myself, I was like, oh, I could start this on Tuesday/Wednesday. I'm going to be fine.
Yeah, that's why I didn't do the audio, because I was like, I'm not paying $14.95 for 2 hours. This is bullshit.
We've talked about this before. Yes. I'm not spending the credit on this.
I think these designations are according to the Hugo Awards.
Right.
So this is the criteria that they use to assess what is what. So a novella is 70 to 160 pages, or 17,500 words to 40,000 words.
Okay, so that makes a novel actually can be quite short then.
A novel, can be anything above 160 pages.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's shorter than I was imagining. So, but I mean, I hadn't seen a novella much bigger than that, so it makes sense. It's just that there's so few novels actually that short.
Yeah.
Is the new Becky Chambers one a really short novel or a long novella?
Let me look it up on Goodreads and I will tell you.
I'm excited about that one.
While we're doing that, and since we're starting to sound like we're wrapping up, G, are you wanting to record the discussion about the second book, or
take it offline? Just to be clear, we did not record the dinosaurs for those reasons.
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm sort of wondering. But I'm also aware that it's been given to us by the person who wrote it, so they might have expectations
that they want to watch.
Or they might get, some promotion for their book.
Well, it's not available online anymore. That's why it was given to us.
You can't get it at all?
No.
Right. Okay.
No longer being published.
G, decision on that one?
He doesn't want to watch anything. He's fine. I had a chat to him yesterday.
Okay, cool. All right, we'll take it offline then. Once we're done.
Kirsten,
I think it's more appropriate.
The Becky Chambers novella is 138 pages.
Oh, it's going to be so short though.
Gosh. Look here.
It means I'm going to have to reread it like 3 times because I won't get my Becky Chambers back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't. It didn't feel. I don't want to get into stuff because we're going to talk about it. I'm sure we'll do that book at some point.
When are we doing it?
It's one of the mini reads for next year, guys. It will be scheduled. I don't think it's the first one that I've scheduled, but it will be scheduled.
Yeah, no, it is.
It is the first one.
Is it? Oh, good.
You scheduled it. You have scheduled it. That's the only reason I knew I had to do it. Is because you scheduled it. Because Mel, you are too organised. You and me, we are organised people.
I can't help myself. I'm sorry. Yeah, so that means
What? Don't apologise. This is
No, it's good. I like organisation. It's good.
that
I'll
means
just
it's
say
scheduled for
Someone's
February.
organised.
okay. I'm making more drinks. Someone get Karina in the room to talk about stuff.
Yeah, okay. So, G, are you right with me wrapping us up?
Beautiful.
All right.
Okay.
Anybody who is joining us for tonight, thank you very much for coming. Hope you enjoyed the discussion of Binti. Come again and listen to us ramble. I'm sure it'll be great fun. All right. See you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.